Happy day, YouTube. My name is John, and this is my channel, The Intermancer. Last episode, I began updating my backend server so that I had a concept of running multiple experiments. I originally thought of this because I wanted the scored organism repository to keep a record of how different experiments went, or all the organisms that they generated. And I realized at the end of last episode that the changes needed to be a little bit more invasive than I had originally expected. So we're going to do that. We're continuing that journey now. The last thing that I did was I did all the things for the scored organism repository, but I realized that my experiment controller needs to own managing the experiment. And right now, I believe I have experiment as a component. Basic experiment implementation. Yeah, it's a component here. So we're going to have to get rid of that. And all this auto-wired stuff means that I will need to pull it in from my application context, which is something I used to do a lot, but I haven't done in a while, so I'll have to ask the AI about that. But we're starting with, as always, we do context-driven or spec-driven development. And so the first thing we need to do is come over here to our spec, and we need to update this. So the first thing I notice is that in the methods, I don't have the methods declared on the interface. So I'm going to do that real quick. I can do a period here. I don't need to give details. That's the whole point of an interface, is to not worry about the details. Okay. Now we need to get rid of this component. Implementation, the experiment interface. This, since this uses auto-wired dependencies, it will need to be instantiated using the application context. Now, that's really all I need to do there. But now on ExperimentController, we will need to update ExperimentController. Where is it? I should have, you know what? Experiment status listener. That's not even a thing. It's just making that up. That's a hallucination. I guess it's telling me it thinks I need an experiment status listener. experiment instances. It uses the application context to auto-wire all of the experiment dependencies. It maintains a list of experiments the start this is where an experiment is instantiated and added to the list. Properties. Do I still have seed? I need to get rid of seed. Now seed is part of an experiment. Let's double check that. Yeah, run experiment does that. I'm also going to need to have the status mapped to. No, right now we'll just keep that in because I'm pinging it on my UI. Okay, so now we're going to do the trick where we tell the AI that we have updated. I have updated to so that experiment is no longer a component, but rather is managed by ExperimentController. Analyze experimentation to make sure the new feature has been described consistently across the document. Okay. So again, part of my evolving workflow is to make changes to the context document and then ask the AI to verify those changes and then work through what bit by bit implementing those changes in the code. Implementation. thought I did take that out. Okay. All right, sure. I'll take that. Experiment controller. Experiment controller description does not still list a seed method. Where are you getting that? I know no, that endpoint is no longer used. Are you referencing an older version of experimentation.md? Do I need to use a new chat to clear that from your cache? Okay, so that's experiment controller. Update experiment controller based on the new latest version of experiment. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So cedar isn't used because experiment uses that. Let's make sure we get that out of experimentation in D. And I'm not going to ask the AI to make that change for me. Just going to remove it. Okay. Now, I never did a new test for experiment scored organism repository. What are the related problems? Right. Scored organism repository and scored organism repository test. In-memory scored organism repository and in-memory scored organism repository test.java have gotten out of sync. Rewrite in-memory scored organism repository test.java to match the description of in-memory that is from experimentation. All right. In-memory scored organism repository test. It's giving me the whole thing. It's not giving me snippets. So I'll just copy and paste. And let's try the Gradle build. If this Gradle build works, I'm just going to do the commit in the video, and next time I will work to test the UI to make sure that an experiment still runs appropriately. In the UI, I still haven't gotten to the point where I'm displaying a repo or looking at the organisms in a repo. So that was one of the reasons why I figured it would be a good place to do this. Oh. One, two, three, four. Experiment ID. Update is the description. Do I need to update the description of experiment cycle impl now that a scored organism needs an experiment ID? And experimentation. I recently heard of a study that said that senior developers that use AI think that they code about 20% faster, but in fact code about 20% slower. I am wondering if that is affecting me using from this methodology. I don't see any changes here. Oh, this. Each scored organism. Okay. Sure. this is where it made that change. Okay, so experiment cycle. No, we don't need that. Okay. Update the Cedar interface. Okay, so let's see. Let's look at it. Okay. Now, so Cedar interface. Needs to take an experiment ID. Knew about that. Organisms require an experiment. Okay. So I've updated that. So let's look at the Cedar interface. String, the basic Cedar. String, experiment ID. Okay, we're gonna have to add this to all the things. This is definitely something that I could have had the AI do. This is also something I could have used copy and paste to do. Oh, I missed this. I missed my paste, put it in the wrong place. Part of me is happy to make these edits by hand because one of my assumptions is that someone does need to keep their pulse on the code. Okay. So I've updated basic seeder. I've updated seeder. Update. Okay, we're going to go ahead and ask the AI to look at both the experiment cycle impl and basic experiment impl together. Update basic experiment and basic and experiment cycle impl. Cycle impl. To include the new requirement for giving new requirement for scored organisms to have an experiment ID associated to them. All right, two at once. Let's see what this does. After this change, I'm going to try the build. If it succeeds, I'm going to push. If it fails, I'm going to stop the video and pick it up next time. Why did it need to make any changes to seeder? I already did that. Okay. Fair enough on the experiment. So we'll apply that because I need to add the get experiment ID. Normally I wouldn't add properties that are relevant towards the implementation in the interface, but everything needs that experiment ID to carry it down. So in this case, it does need it. Okay. Basic experiment impl. I'm just going to take the changes without reading them. Maybe foolish. Still has a compilation error. Where's the compilation error? Oh, got it. Okay. So it's telling because the changes for basic experiment impl assume the changes to experiment cycle that haven't gotten there yet. Okay. So now let's go to experiment cycle. Apply these changes. And now basic experiment cycle impl. This is taking a while. Okay, now we will do the build. Now if this succeeds and I go to push the code, it might have warnings that I need to clean up. We shall see. Oh. Basic experiment impl tests. Okay. Update basic experiment impl test based on all of these changes. Applying this change. Experiment cycle input test. Update. Experiment cycle input test based on these changes. What happened? Where are the changes? Okay. Experiment cycle input test. What is this error? Take calls to don't include experiment experiment ID. So they are not compiling. Okay, let's go ahead and do a new chat. Experiment cycle impl test has some compilation errors because of some updates to how the scored organism repository uses experiment ID. Update experiment cycle impl test. All right, let's apply this. And try the build again. Failing tests. Okay. Failing tests. So this is a place I am going to pause. Next episode, I will fix these tests. Hopefully next episode will be short. I'll fix these tests and update and try to get the code pushed up to GitHub. But that's it for now. So thank you for your time.